He said something like, when you go to Santa Barbara, you ought to check out Isla Vista. And I'm like, what's that? He said, well, it's a little college community. You'd like it. You'd see it. My interests in the arts are kind of confined to painting. People will say to me, oh, he's an artist, or that guy's an artist. And I often correct people by saying I'm a painter. And I got into art when I was pretty young. Finger painting in kindergarten was the most fun. We put down a piece of butcher paper with oil on it, and they would slop this tempera paint, and your job as a kid was to go like this with it. And I knew right then I wanted to be a painter. I'm from a small town in northern Ohio, a place called Ashland, Ohio. It's about halfway between Cleveland and Columbus. I lived there until 1972. Terrible weather and limited in the way of the arts. I did not have anyone as a child who could kind of guide me in painting. Maybe that's a good thing.
Growing up, was your family really supportive of you?
A little bit, yeah. They didn't say don't do that, son, because you're not going to make any money at that. I never remember that. And what I do remember is being about 6 years old, going down to visit my dad in the state of Ohio where he worked. He was a civil draftsman, and he just excellent lettering. These guys could sit there and just make their letters just perfect. And I have some lettering skills today. You'll see it in my work in the IB Sketchbooks. I remember going down to visit him, being about 5 or 6 years old, and him giving me pencils and a little pencil box. How do you say it, Mars Statler. I still buy those pencils. Those nice little blue and black pencils, which are so much fun to draw with. We were going out, there was some guard there, and my dad's like, well, don't let him see that, stick that in your thing. And then I would go from there. Like I say, there wasn't anybody around to help me. I always had artists that I liked as a kid. I liked Norman Rockwell, still do. I always liked Salvador Dali. I liked Maxfield Parrish back in the 70s for some reason. My hometown was about 20,000 people, so it was quite a treat to go to a big city like Los Angeles or San Francisco or New York City. So in ¡74, I'm hitchhiking, and I'm 21 years old, and I come out here, and I loved it. And I thought, how could you ever live here? I had about $20 on me. And I was pretty broke. I ended up back living with my parents for a couple of years. You know, you're like 23 years old. It's kind of embarrassing. But nonetheless, it was equitable, and the art I did kept me going. And my art was always with me. I never stopped doing it. By the time I'm 23, I'm hanging out more in college towns, because by that time, the big city, I don't like it anymore. I find too many problems with living in a big city. College towns were more of a quaint little place. One place I landed when I was 23 was Columbia, Missouri. I lived there for 2 years. I went from there to Lawrence, Kansas. Santa Barbara was a nice successor to Lawrence and Columbia. When I got hired at Carrillo Commons, the year was 1979. That was one of my favorite jobs. And I was 26 years old. I had not been to college yet. And I was struck by how casual and open the students were.
Did you put yourself through school at Long Beach?
Yeah, eventually. I went to Long Beach in the summer of '84. I remember that really well. You were essentially a general art major until they let you in a program. Traditional drawing and painting interested me, but I moved toward illustration, and I pictured myself illustrating greeting cards. I was aiming toward a commercial art career where I could do whatever they wanted me to do, be it greeting cards, be it advertising, be it book illustration. All those things were very hard for me to enter. And I graduated Long Beach in '88, and there was a period of like, what the hell am I going to do with myself? '92, I'm living in Long Beach still. And when the riots came, I was working as a framer by that time. I'm out of school. I would get on a little calculator and I'd figure out prices for people. And this was my way of just staying employed. I went from joining the frames to this other shop where I did the sales, and because they didn't want me, it was like they don't want you doing the frames anymore. They got somebody else that's cheaper that'll do that. You're kind of aced out of that. I miss the days when someone would bring by something and you as the framer would then say, oh, look at this is nice. You got something here. All the things that people used to do in my parents' generation, no one's going to take the time to do that now. It's too time consuming. To me, that is kind of a shame. And then framing ran its course. I can't get the job I want in LA anyway. Let's go back to Santa Barbara. Down to earth people, not a lot of traffic. That's what it kind of, that and the riots kind of turned me off of LA. By that time I've been in LA about, was it 11 years? It was more like 15.
This section will be the sketchbook life. There's so many mediums of art. Why did you decide to choose water?
Watercolor, I think, is the hardest, but it's quite portable. I wanted to go to IV, and I knew when I was doing Refugio, I was thinking, okay, what are you going to do next? IV would occur to me now and then, and I would think, well, you cannot do it the way you did Refugio, where you've got your truck, you've got your canvases and your big pack and your tripod. You want to travel much lighter than that. The e-bike came into my life. By this time, I'm doing watercolors for a good 3 years. It was when I lost the apartment a little over a year ago that I thought, well, you got to have a project, so let's do IV and let's do the bike and let's do watercolor. And all that came together, and you get really good at watercolor by practicing. You need the practice. You screw up a lot. A teacher I had at Long Beach said, talking about watercolor, you must float the media. You do not scrub, as you would with oil. You often scrub, whereas here you want to float. And I keep that in mind now. Catch myself not floating. You want to float. You want to have enough water and media on your brush tip and spread that across the paper gently, and it has to go down.
Why do you choose sketchbooks to record your paintings in?
The thing I like best about these books is how they're back to back. People often say, hey, I'd like to buy that one, and I'll say something like, well, gee, I've painted, there's another picture on the side of it or on the other side of it. It's nice and portable. And then the larger books I have, it's funny, this is an old one from the early series, 11 by 14, that's as big as it gets for me.
How many sketchbooks do you think you've filled over the years?
Oh God, I've probably got, I'll bet I've got 50 at home. They function as history to me. I look at them, like when I look, some of them are pretty bad that I look at. I've got some books from around 2000 that are very primitive. They don't have the style and the class that I'm able to pull off today.
In your opinion, what makes a subject worth painting?
Yeah, I'm kind of random that way. Some things do stick out, like this scene when I did this because there was a place to sit down, which I try not to do that. Or I'll be riding the bike a lot of times, and I pull up at some place. It seems convenient. This house is typical in that it's so unique looking. I've done it many times. It stands out, and the ocean is there, and the island is there. So that offers all these nice little additional things to put into it. Some of that is the angle.
What do you hope people feel when they look at your artwork?
Technical competency. I want people to say, wow, look at that. He did that while he was just standing there. He didn't have a photograph. He didn't have anything with him, and he was able to pull that off. To me, that's impressive. It's always fun when comedians can improvise. I like to improvise.
After your normal job that you've been doing, going to IV, would you say that's where you feel most at peace?
I think so, yeah. Yesterday was an example of where I get over there and I get my book out and I start working, and pretty soon I'm not as tired as I thought I was. Or you turn on the music, and I am energized a little bit by that. I've kind of given up working at home. Why is that? Why don't I paint at home anymore? I don't have time. I'd rather be outside. The light is so good.
Were you living in Isla Vista? You want to live in Isla Vista and you had to move?
I know. I wouldn't mind moving back there for one reason. Wouldn't I do a more thorough approach to the community if I were actually living there? For a while I was riding the bike out there and ride back to the Mesa. That was doable, but I wasn't crazy about that. It's nice to be able to drive out there now. I'm not crazy about living over on the Mesa, but it's a nice home. We have a nice place, great guys to live with.
And so tell me about your typical day.
Typical for me to get up before dawn, to put in my 30 some hours per week. Gonna get up tomorrow about 4:30 and come here, get out of here early, and then get out of here about 4 o'clock and go over to IV and work. And the light is such that I can stay out there till 8 o'clock. It's great. And that makes for a full day. Bring my stuff into my room, and I start reviewing what I just did, because that's definitely a technique I got from school. At the end of the class, we want to have our little critique. But I look at the work I've just done, and I cannot judge it while I'm out there. I just can't. I see things that I didn't notice. In doing that little critique, I will carry that knowledge back out there. When you repair this one, here's what you want to do.
What challenges have you faced trying to stay here? Have there been moments where you considered giving up, and what keeps you going?
Yeah, I think about leaving Santa Barbara now and then. By the time I got to be about 60 years old, I would say to myself, thoughts would occur to me, you're not going to be able to afford to live here anymore. And that's really what's happened now. Since I lost the apartment in April of 25, a single one-bedroom apartment all to myself, that's not very realistic these days.
Right. And how have these housing costs affected artists such as yourself?
What worries me about the current economy, or the way the economy is going, how is one to manage and pay your own bills? Now, I'm lucky, and I get a really good Social Security. I worked a lot in the 70s. I worked 2 jobs quite a bit, but it's still not enough. It's scary how it's not enough. And I'm thinking seriously about going back to this second job. Both my roommates and myself are all working 2 jobs. Whereas when I was young in the 70s, I was one of the few people that was working 2 jobs.
What about Isla Vista keeps drawing you back?
It's funny, because I am now at about 200 pictures over. I've got to be over 200 pictures. And typically what happens, this is very true of Refugio, I'd been at it for a year, like I have this series. I've already kind of worn it out, and I have to look for things to draw. And this is not happening so far with IV. That's a very good sign. With IV, I'm finding that there's always something that I haven't seen. I think I have spent too much time on Del Playa, but I like it. And there's buildings I haven't done, and people are always asking me buildings, is downtown IV, the stores, because that to me is more challenging. Same with the cars. It looks naked without people and cars. Yes, the buildings are interesting, and the beach landscape, yes, there's something to that, but don't you want some other element of humanity in it?
What do these paintings give you and mean to you, if you can describe it in like one sentence?
Oh, casualness. Standing outside of this, how do you say it, coffee shop. While I'm in the process of having a bagel and a coffee, I'll do a little picture. It was only about that big. And a guy came by and he said, "Hey, that's nice, and it looks good." And I said, "Yeah, it's casual." And that statement stayed with me for a while, and I thought, don't you want IV to be depicted in this sort of casual manner? I want casualness, and it's lightweight. You don't worry about shit.
How many years in total have you been in Santa Barbara?
In Santa Barbara, boy, it's been most of my life. You figure the 5 years before I went to Long Beach, and since I've been back, 28.
Wow.
28 this fall. 28 plus 5, that's 33, so I've been here a long time.
What would you be doing if money was not a factor at all?
Yeah, if you had, like, say you won the lottery or something.
Yeah.
What would you do with yourself? I probably would just do this and just paint all the time. When Fiesta rolls around, I should ride my bike downtown and do some scenes of Fiesta. They could go in my alternative book. Be a nice little break from IV.
Would you say that painting helps your mental health?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. We need some sort of outlet. A lot of young folks will do this. They've always got their phone out looking at it. And I try to quit doing that, because number one, there's nothing of interest on that phone. You keep looking at it. I don't know why you keep looking at it. I like having the hands-on aspect of drawing. I've never smoked cigarettes. Cigarette smokers used to say, it gives you something to do with your hands, they would say, and that's a point. I need something to do with my hands.
So what are your thoughts on social media and AI?
AI I worry about constantly. If I had to say a few sentences about AI, I would be kind of cautionary and say, this thing is going to take our jobs. It's going to ruin our lives. And unlike social media, isn't it going to put up a sort of a phony little reality? We already have our own reality. Aren't these influencer people kind of phony baloney in a sense, where they're projecting this thing that supposedly they know better than us? And I don't need some influencer to tell me this or that. I kind of have my own mind. That's why I'm trying to read books, and some of the stuff I read is so tedious. I do want to get out the phone. That's a bad aspect, I think, of people in general, young people in general. They cannot sit still for anything. Now, of course, no one can function without their phone. In the internet, whoever's doing that, they're purposely giving you a material which is dumbed down to make you as stupid as possible, telling you stuff that I've already heard. I read this in college. I heard this. I heard that.
You don't see AI taking over human-made artwork, though.
Right. I hope not. I hope it doesn't come to that. To be honest, will someone say in 50 years, will someone do what I do? Go out there and hand draw something. In 50 years, I'm kind of wondering, will that be equitable? Will that be doable? There's already applications where you can have a little pad with you, and I'm sure you do draw somewhat, but the computer, doesn't the computer kind of help you do it? As if the computer were just blindly doing it, if someone didn't have any knowledge, isn't that wrong? There's something wrong about that. In a way, I think that's what bothers me the most. There's no handmade nature to it, and which there was in the 70s. Handwritten and hand thought, and actually written by the person who was actually playing the song. And that's what I'd like to, when I'm gone 50 years from now, if these fell into the hands of somebody who was actually living in an IV, and they were up in their apartment just going like this and flipping through it.
What do you think the artist loses when they stop relying on themselves and their own imagination? And then what do you think that the audience loses from receiving that artwork?
You know Van Gogh. You know how clumsy and weird he could be, and the drawing is in the painting. His style is so unique. Al Hirschfeld was one. He was a caricaturist, a cartoonist who would draw these famous Broadway people, and you knew right away that was Hirschfeld when you saw it.
What still gives you hope as an artist?
Oh, that's a good question, because I don't like it when old people are real negative. And I try to be positive. I try to think positive. That's a good question. I would say it like, I still want to work on my drawing skills. I'm always working on getting better at drawing. I'm drawing more than I am painting. When I was doing a lot of acrylic canvases, I was given, in those days, a portable CD player. That was state of the art at the time. And that was fun to take your CDs outside. But that went away long about 20 years ago. And now all I have is the phone, and I'll go to Spotify or I'll go to YouTube, and I'll land on some songs. But you know, there's a stupid ad at every song, and I'm trying to paint. So I end up, after a while, I unplug that. I guess I'll paint without music. I do miss the CD player. I like the aspect, okay, I listened to an entire album. Just like we did in the 70s, we would listen to the album from front to back. So you got to hear the musicians' entire repertoire of songs in order. You did not mix them up in any way, because we couldn't do that. We couldn't mix things up. There were albums which were a so-called concept album, where the songs would be of a certain theme, and Aren't My Books somewhat of a certain theme. I've got a nice variety of Isla Vista, and that makes a nice theme, just like those albums had a nice theme to them.
If someone buys one of your paintings, what are they really taking home, and what do you hope that they gain from it?
Oh, I would like to think it's something to cherish quite often because of the place itself. Way back around the year 2000, it was a nice comment that I didn't expect, I didn't think about. I've walked along this same beach, she said, or I've been there, I know right where that is. It'll be fun in 50 years to have someone looking at this, how much changes will occur.
Yeah.
One series I did 25 years ago, I called it The Lost World. It was a depiction of buildings downtown Santa Barbara, which they were going to tear down, which they ultimately did. Urban buildings that had this sort of worn out look to them, and I like that aspect. Kind of true at IV. When I first started the IV series, I remember spending a day just walking around, looking at the place, and thinking negative thoughts. I started thinking, well, these are a bunch of ugly-looking buildings, aren't they? But I don't say that now. Now I would take that back now. The buildings are of various vintage. I don't know the history on some of these. Some of these buildings are quite beautiful. There's a lot of stuff on Del Playa that I don't remember from the old days. I wish I had photographs of the old days. But as far as apartments, what is cool about IV now, or it's kind of weird, is the parking. A nice look at cars all jammed in, and there's some buildings in there, and I like those telephone poles. For some odd reason, I've gravitated toward those Del Playa telephone poles. They're so weird looking. And what's it going to be like in 5, 10 years? I talk to people that have 9 roommates, and I'm like, how do you use the bathroom? What do you guys do?
What would your ideal future look like if you could full-time paint and produce and sell your artwork?
Oh, if everything were perfect like that, and if I were making money, oh, I'd adapt it somehow. Yeah, it's my nature to not do the same thing all the time.
Are there any specific projects that you have in mind right now that you would want to pursue?
I'd like to do Fiesta this year if I can get the time. I did it 2 years ago and it was fun. But I'd like to go down and do Carpinteria. That would make a nice subject for sketchbook work, or for that matter for canvases. Buildings in Santa Barbara which no one else paints. If you go around, you'll see these interesting looking buildings. They're not the harbor or the Mission. I like them, and that's what I find in IV. I find some interesting bit of architecture that I've ignored until now. It would be fun to have old cars in some of these pictures, but there just aren't that many in IV.
What gives you inspiration?
Not the internet. Yeah, something other than what you see online.
Great answer.
Something other than the internet.
Do you have a favorite film?
Casablanca followed by Marty. Those are 2 excellent films. And I like all that old classic stuff.
What advice would you give younger artists?
Oh, just draw more. As I draw more, I get better. If one can't learn to draw, come on. What are you supposed to do? Just like playing an instrument. You should be able to get through the tediousness of that.
What advice would you give the younger generations?
Boy, I feel in a way they're up against it in ways that I never was, and I feel it's unfair. Everyone's telling you you're not going to be able to buy a house, you're never going to be able to retire, and they didn't do that when I was young. They're going to have to find some alternative way to make money. They want to hand that job to somebody who's going to work for cheaper. They would often say that you need to have a skill, and which I attribute that today to if you could become a plumber or electrician, you'd be better off.
What does success mean to you now?
I have all my art supplies. I'm able to do what I can do. And to me, that is success. The times I was working 2 jobs, and there have been a lot of times I couldn't do artwork. I had no money for art supplies. Those were bad times.
So how would you define success in your opinion?
Oh, I think that as long as you're doing something that you're pleased with, that you're happy with. I don't like people that are just about money all the time. To be a success, I think, is to just be doing what you want to do. And you have freedom. We have such a wonderful, it's a free country kind of thing, and we're able to go out and do what we want to do. The series is a year old. To me, it's still young. I'm still finding things to draw. I could do this for a couple of years. I am thinking about other projects, but I wouldn't mind spending the next 2 years in IV.
So you can find Rick Toberen riding around Isla Vista.
All right.
And give him a hi and ask for a print.
All right.